Hello and welcome to Bits and Bobs in Photoshop. I'm Stephen and today we're going to take a look at creating shadows in Photoshop. So to make realistic looking shadows, there's many techniques in Photoshop to use. This is just one technique that I use on a regular basis. Again, it depends on the composition or the photo manipulation that I'm working on and the effect overall that I want. So I'm going to show you a couple of things here. I've chosen to take this plant image right here, and we're going to put it onto this image here. Now you might ask, well, why have I chosen to pick a plant or a cactus in a pot to place on this background image here? The reason for that is simply because I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want the tutorial going on for long, making it complicated. Putting a person in using this method, it takes a little longer to get the kind of shadow shape right, as you'll see as we progress through this. But the main thing is I wanted to keep it quite short because this is about a technique. I'm not going to make a full photo manipulation here, adding the light tones and correcting the kind of the ambient lighting of the sky and everything else. I'm not going to bother doing none of that. It's not about making a composition. All I wanted to show you was how to make an effective shadow using Photoshop. So I can show you the technique. You can then, once you understand the technique and you've seen how it's done, you can then take that away, a little bit of practice, and you'll be applying some great shadows yourself. So let's get started. So first of all, we need to make a mask. I've already gone and done that, so I'm just going to apply the layer mask, as you can see. The main reason is I've done that because you don't need to see me do a mask, because this is not a tutorial about making masks. Now I would normally drag this layer over to this image and put it in place like so. Again, you know how to do all that, I'm assuming, so therefore we won't bore you with the details there. So there are three main parts of a shadow. We have a contact shadow. We have what I would call, say, the environmental shadow, and we would have the main shadow part itself. If we look at the rock here that's casting a shadow in the background here, let's just turn the plant off to avoid distraction here. You can see that this rock here has got the dark kind of edge of the shadow just around this area here. If I zoom in a little, we can see that better. The dark kind of area here around the shadow, where it's actually in contact with the surface, we have the main part of the shadow here. We have this kind of area, part of it here is maybe kind of what I would say is not a strong shadow, but it's a part in shadow, so it's kind of created by the ambient light of the image. We can also see this, like with the smaller stones and rocks on the ground, we can see the shadows that are quite dark here. But again, on the side of this little rock down here, it's kind of more of an ambient side. The same as the archway here. This is not fully in shadow, but where the shadow is kind of the light is coming quite at a low direction from this way, causing the shadows to be long. It's low in the sky, so the shadows are quite long at this time of day. And it's kind of creating an ambient shadow around here. So let's get on with creating the shadow itself. So now we know we've got three parts. We're going to need three layers for each part of our shadow. Now we want these layers to be under our main subjects. Let's first start off by naming these layers. Let's call this one background, and let's call this one our subject. Our plant pot, let's call it plant pot. Spell that correctly. There we go. Now we've done that. The mask is still applied, so I'm going to apply the mask to that. So I'm just going to right click on the mask itself and say apply layer mask, so just to tidy it up and keep things tidy, as I know I don't need to change that no more. So now I've got my two layers named, and now what I want to do is I want my shadow layers to actually be under the plant pot layer. So now if we go down here and we create a new layer, what happens is it will create layers on top. Handy tip is, if you press down and hold the control key on your keyboard or command key on a Mac and click the new layer, we will get layers actually under. So let's go ahead and create three new layers. The bottommost layer, we want to call that our contact shadow. Contact shadow. And if I can actually type that in correctly, it'd be more handy. There we go, contact shadow. Now on this one is going to be our environment shadow, and the topmost layer will be our main shadow. like so. Then we're going to start at the bottom here with our contact shadow. So we want kind of a shadow around like the bottom of the area, much like it is in that rock there. So we want this to be around this side of the pot. Now this side of the pot is lit up because the sun's coming from this way. Again, in a proper composition, I would probably make this white a little bit more kind of orangey to reflect the kind of the colours here. But, you know, we're not going to bother doing that. We're just going to keep it as it is for now. We'll sort that out later on. So, right, let's have a look at the bottom contact shadow. So the first thing we need to do is select our brush tool. So we can press B on the keyboard, or we can come over here and select our brush tool, like so. I'm also going to zoom into the image slightly, and I'm going to press and hold the space bar and drag and drop the mouse to move that up. So we've got the bottom of the pot in view. I'm going to go up to brush settings, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to choose a soft round brush. I'm going to change the hardness to about 80%. Let's go for 80%. I'm going to leave my opacity and flow on 100%. And I'm going to come around to the bottom of the pot. I'm going to adjust, you can adjust your brush size, you can, to more whatever's suitable to fit you. And all we want to do is not necessarily this out, but now, before that, one thing before, if we press Alt on the keyboard, we will get our color dropper, our ink dropper up that we can pick a color from. So what we want to do is look for a dark area of the image or somewhere where it's going to create a suitable shadow, so we can pick from the existing shadows that are on the ground. So in this case, I'm going to pick this near rock here, I think, because this has got quite a nice colour. I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to pick that colour there, like so. Okay, now what I'm going to do, we've got our colour selected, we've got our brush settings done. All I'm going to do is simply just go near the edge and gradually just paint in around here slightly, and maybe a bit more around this edge because this is the darker side. So we'd see more contact around here, and just maybe just a slight highlight around that area there. It doesn't have to be too defined here, just a tiny bit here maybe. And there we go. It's not much again on this image because of the way the sun is. Again, each image will be differently, but you can just draw that in like that, just getting the edge over slightly, adding to it and taking away as needed. I just want to put that a little bit more there, and there. That's good enough for me. Now what we do is we go back over to here where our layers are, and we put this into multiply blend mode. At the moment you're not going to see a big impact on that, so don't worry. At the moment we can zoom out, and now we have our plant pot here. Our cactus pot is grounded to the ground more because we've got that contact shadow around the edge. It's not going to cast a big shadow. Under here is going to be a bigger shadow because it's slightly off the ground a bit more there. We're looking kind of under it, but here it's going to be quite close to the ground, so that will do us. Now what we do is we move up to our environmental shadow. So we select the environmental shadow layer. So with our brush tool still selected, let's go up and change our settings here. I'm going to turn the hardness all the way down to 0 for this. We've got nice soft edges on our brush. I'm going to change the opacity to 10%. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can either click and hold on the opacity word there and drag up and down to change the opacity. You can click on the drop down arrow and move this up and down, or you can just press the number 1 key on your keyboard and it will take you to, if you watch up here, there we go, 10%. If we press number 2, 20%, number 3, 30%, all the way to 0, which will be back to 100% again. I'm going to increase my brush size a lot on this. I'm using the square brackets on my keyboard here to adjust my brush size. If we make the brush too small, we're going to start seeing brush strokes as it builds up. If we make it bigger, we won't see so many brush strokes. And all I'm going to do is maybe click here, just click off this side a bit, a couple of times, maybe a bit here, and that will kind of do it. That will do it fine. That will just maybe tiny bit there. Like that. That will do it. That's just our ambient shadow, just a little slightly bit that the pot's going to be casting off this edge. And that's fine. Again, back over to our layers panel. Let's put that into multiply blending mode. Now you might see a bit of a difference here. There we go, multiplied blending mode, and it looks, it fits in more. The key thing here is we can go to our opacity, and we can also adjust our opacity on this shadow as we go to see a bit of a difference. But for now, we're going to leave our opacity at 100% on all of these layers just for now, and we can always come back and edit those at the end when we've done all of our shadow. So now let's move to our main shadow. You see, it's quite a quick process, this. With our main shadow, we need to alter our brush settings again. So we leave the colour the same. We'll go back up to our brush settings. We'll open them up. I'm going to put the hardness to around about 90% this time. I don't want it to be 91, will do me fine. I want to change the opacity again to 100%, so I'm going to press 0 on my keyboard, and I'm going to lower my brush size to something about that size. Now what we want to do is, and this might look funny at first, but all we need to do is draw our shadow in. I'm just going to paint straight onto this layer our shadow in. So I'm going to come from about here, I'm going to start painting the side of the pot. Now the pot would be kind of coned a bit, so we'll come out like so. Given that the shadows are probably twice as long as the rock is high here, so I'm going to do that. For now, I'm going to bring this line out from here, which you can't see yet, but we're going to bring this line out from here, maybe creating our pot there. Then we'll come out a bit more with this one, maybe like so, and we've got the rim of our pot that kind of would make a kind of a curve here, maybe. Let's take that down, taper that in a bit more. Let's do this side. You can see me clicking and dragging. Incidentally, I would normally do something like this with my tablet and pen, my Wacom tablet. I would use that here in this case because obviously you've got much more easier control than using a mouse. It is possible using a mouse, as you can see, but on some more kind of complex, where someone's standing in a strange position, or you've got a subject like that there, it does take a little bit longer to do with a mouse and a little bit more practice. Let's just colour this in now. I'm going to increase my brush size slightly, and all we're going to do is just colour this area in with all of our standard colour here. So I'm just holding the mouse and just painting all that in. Now I'm going to maybe tidy up that edge there slightly, and we can just do these things ever so slightly. I'm going to put a little lip there maybe, and a little bit there maybe, like so. I'm going to lower my brush now. Now let's do the plant. Now the plant fills most of the pot up, so I'm just going to make my brush a little bit smaller. Let's make maybe a line smaller here. Let's just do kind of some random. I can't obviously see the exact shape of the plants and that, so I'm just going to do some angled lines here. Again, we can tidy these up quite significantly. I'm just kind of guessing this here. We could also add a bit, maybe a pointer to that bit. And now I'm just going to fill in these edges a bit here. We're going to fill all this in, all this part here. I will change to a bigger brush in a second to speed this up. I just want to get in the finer points here. Let's just tidy that one up because that don't look very good there. Bring that to there. Maybe that one to there. Like so. Now when we fill this in, this part here, we just colour all this in now, making sure all of our little gaps are filled up. When we filled this part in, we can look at that. You know what, that's not a bad representation of that plant. That looks okay from there. The blend mode once again. So now we've done that, let's go over to our main shadow layer and go up to our blending mode and put that into multiply, and you can see a massive difference already. It's looking pretty damn good. From here, what we're going to do is we will go to our blur tool over here. We'll click on that and we'll leave the mode to normal, the strength to 100%, and all I'm going to do is slightly start kind of clicking around some of these edges. The ones nearer to the pot I'm not going to click on. I'm just going to slightly do these and around this area here just to soften those off a bit. Keep clicking and dragging, clicking, multiple drags. Like so. It's looking good now, looking much better. Let's just do that area there. Yeah, it's looking much better now. Let's just do this bit here and maybe this part of the pot down here where it's a bit further away from us. Like so. It's just broke up the definition of that hard edge on that part of the thing. We can also go ahead and alter our opacity now as well, maybe bring that down slightly. Just us slightly maybe to there, like so. The cool thing is now, what we can do is, we can actually make some adjustments. Now, if we look at our shadows and our directions of our shadows, they're going a little bit up that way. Our one's going straight, so we need to maybe move this up this way a little bit. So if we press Control plus T on the keyboard or Command plus T on a Mac, we get the transform tool, and we can make this bigger and smaller and so on and so forth. Maybe a little bit bigger there, like so. It looks quite nice. The cool thing is, if you right click the mouse within here, we get the other transform tools we can change to. We can also change the skew of it, and we can maybe skew our pot a little bit more, maybe making it a little bit wider up there, maybe bring this side in a bit here. We can right click now and choose to warp maybe, and we might want to bring this bit up here or warp it slightly, or bring this bit out a bit wider maybe. Let's go back to our perspective tool. Let's try the perspective tool and see what that does. That's not bad. That's added a bit more, bit jumpy, but that's not too sad. Let's have a look here. We can move this up slightly to kind of match our angles of our light here a bit better. There we go. Not bad. Not bad at all. Let's just drag that up there maybe a bit more, and maybe this up slightly more. There we go. We hit return on the keyboard to put that in place. Not a bad looking shadow. Might be a little bit wide up here, so let's just go Control Transform again. Maybe bring that in just a slight amount, like so. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to have independent sizing on that. That's a little bit better there. I like that. Maybe just move that way ever so slightly. Hit return, and there we go. I'm much more pleased with that. The next step is to add maybe a graduated effect to this. As you can see, the shadows in this image, they have quite a hard finish around here and around here, but in some situations the light might fall in such a way where the shadows kind of taper off at the end. So we can do that quite easily by going over to our fill tool, our gradient fill tool. Now if you can't see the gradient fill tool, if you click and hold on the paint bucket, this will open up the tab and you click the gradient tool. We're now going to go up here and we're going to select basics on the type, and we're going to go foreground to transparent, like so. With that selected, we want to press D on our keyboard, and doing so, if we look down here, we'll change our colours to the default black and white. So now what it's going to do is, instead if it does pick white over the top of black, you can press the X key, and if you notice, the foreground and background colours will change over. We want black on top, we want black as our foreground colour. If we move our image over here slightly so we can get the gradient in, if we click and drag, we'll create a gradient. So if we put a mask, we go over here now and we go to our main shadow. Let's apply a mask to our main shadow. Again, if we paint black on a mask, it will make them parts masked out of the image. So if we just drag and out following the direction of our shadow, obviously the amount you drag, like so, will cause the gradient effect to be on that part. Oh, sorry, I need to get black selected. If we do that, as you can see, that's way too much, because the gradient will spread itself across how long the line is from the blue point here to the X, and that's where the gradient will appear. We don't want that much, but if you drag right outside your image and just put it, say, to there, you can just start seeing that come in, and you can do it again and add slightly more effect to that, and that adds a slightly more kind of nice balanced section to it where it goes off a bit more. I'm going to just undo that last one and maybe drag slightly more. There we go, like so, and it's looking pretty good. So now what we can do is, as well, with the mask applied to this, don't forget you can always pick your brush tool, go up here, select the soft round brush, put the hardness down to 0. We can change our opacity to 10% by pressing 1 on the keyboard, making a larger brush, and maybe just going over this, some of the edges here, maybe some of this part, just down here, maybe a little bit there and there, just to take a slight little bit away, and there we go. It's looking pretty good. So another thing we can do is add a slight darker side to our pot here, because as we can see in our stone, it's a little bit darker. Maybe it'll be a little bit darker around this side of the pot, and maybe graduate this shadow a little bit better to show the sunlight on this side of the pot just slightly better, and maybe just darken some of these parts of our leaves just here. A great way to do this is go to our plant pot layer. We're going to press Control J or Command J on a keyboard to duplicate the layer. So we've got our copy here. Now we're going to go down here to our adjustment layers and we're going to choose curves. We go back up to our curves panel here to where we can adjust this, and we're going to click on this symbol here to clip the curve, and you can notice the layer just here will jump over and get this little arrow. Now what this does is this means it will only affect the layer below it, in this case the plant pot copy, rather than all the layers below it. So if we leave it like it is now and we adjust our curves layer, like so, you'll see all of our images are going to get changed. If we hit the clip button and it only affects this layer, it's only going to affect the layer on top, which is the plant pot copy at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is I've put a dot right in the center kind of curve here of the curve line. This diagonal line here is the curves line. We can adjust this line towards the darker areas, the lighter areas. This is the mid-tone areas, and you can adjust this curve to affect the lighting in an image. Slightly more control than with curves than there is with levels. Similar kind of thing. So now we're going to grab this center point and we're going to drag it down like so until we make our pot pretty dark, like so. That'll do me there. Now, with our making sure the mask is selected on the curves layer, if we press Control I or Command I on a Mac, it will invert the mask and taking it away. And I bet you've guessed it already. Select the brush tool that we've got done already. Now we want white selected this time as our main colour. But leave our opacity to 10%. Now if we slightly paint on this, we can start bringing in, again we're going to use a softer brush for this, softer edge brush. We can make this edge a lot darker just around this side, and we can graduate this out a bit like so. Maybe put a little bit in the bottom here. Let's put a darker side to this, maybe just around that bit there. Click and drag over these a few times to get it like that, adjust that, and you can adjust the opacity as you go up here. You can maybe about put 20 or 30% to affect the actual gradient kind of style of that of shadowing. So there we go, that's how to make a shadow in Photoshop, and that's one of the ways I do it quite consistently. Again, the effect of the shadow would be different in every image you create, obviously, but all I wanted to show you, I mean, if I was going to have this as a composition here, obviously I would have changed this light into something a little bit more kind of in the brown style, maybe into the ambient light, the kind of the bluish kind of, you know, just lower the warmth into the image slightly more rather than having such a white light. Change the side of the highlights on this, maybe scale the pot in there a little bit better. But you know, I just wanted to show you how to create the shadow and the technique that I use on an object that was quite simple to do without the video going on for, you know, an hour long into creating one shadow. So now you know the technique. Take that technique away, give it a go, bit of practice drawing things in and that, and you'll have great looking shadows in no time at all. So, I hope you've learnt something new today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check back soon for more tips and tricks and bits and bobs in Photoshop. Again, I don't want to show complete photo manipulations on this channel. I like to show you techniques that you can then take away and apply to your own photo manipulations, rather than me saying, hey, you know, a walkthrough of an entire manipulation that you're going to follow along with and not learn much from. But this way you can take this technique now, apply it to your own images and create some fantastic looking shadows. If you did learn something today, be sure to like, comment, subscribe and all of that. Stay safe and bye for now.